What is up? Welcome to the American Peloton. This is a show about bicycle racing in America, mostly road bikes, but we might get into a little bit of gravel and cyclocross and other things here and there. I assume we got a lot of new people here. I'm Jonathan Crane. I am a mediocre Cat 2 cyclist out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And I'm Ben, head coach at Skyway Cycling, team director at Skyway, presented by Domestique Cycling. First off,
Yeah.
GC Kuss, and that's all I'm
Yeah,
gonna
we got to
say.
get
And
it out
now
of
we
there.
can go back to America.
Yeah, I think that counts. I've actually had multiple people ask me if we're going to talk, if now that the American Peloton is relevant in a Grand Tour, if we're going to start talking about Grand Tours. And if there wasn't a bunch of stuff going on, maybe we would. And if I wouldn't get DCMA'd on YouTube right now, I would play September by Earth, Wind, and Fire, but
There we
that would
go.
get copyright strike immediately. But
Right.
September.
There we go.
Anyway, I'm glad we're starting on a light note because we got to come back around to, immediately something that kind of sucks. I don't know how else to say it.
Right.
It's not exactly the way I want to start the show, but a lot of people are probably seeing the show for the first time because I made a YouTube video about the suspension of Justin Williams last week. I guess the suspension really happened a couple weeks ago at this point, and the news was sort of trickling out. So Ben and I had seen the video in question way back NCL. So we did a show about that race, Littleton Twilight, and we were talking about the finale, and we had said like, yeah, Legion was just up there and then they were gone. They just disappeared. And some people told us there was a reason for that, and there was a crash that we didn't see, and we saw the GoPro video of it, but we're told, this is not going out into the world yet because there's an ongoing investigation. So we just kind of had to sit on it for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was tough to bite our tongues on that one because we knew, and
Yeah.
people were like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And we're just like, "Don't know, can't say."
Yeah. And we had a lot of, I feel like we had a lot of time to talk about it between ourselves and like
Yeah.
process it or whatever before the news hit.
Yeah.
So I was not even really planning to make a video on it, but as soon as the news hit, but I assumed as soon as the news hit, all of the stories, like the one we're looking at. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, we're looking at the stuff we're talking about, but we try to keep it where the audio version works as a podcast as well. But there's stories now on Velo News, on Cycling Tips, all the major platforms. But it basically took a week for that to happen. So uh, Criterium Nation podcast Instagram posted the video, sort of an edited together video of a couple of perspectives that showed the crash. I made a video analyzing that. I had already had some time to kind of process it, but basically my thesis of that was like it seemed a little bit over the line to me. And I think Ben, that's your take as well, right?
Yeah, 100% agree. Pretty egregious move. Definitely over the line. Definitely some intent that seemed to be more than just, hey, I want to win this bike race behind the move as well.
Right. I think, yeah, I mean, anything that causes, so there's a few things. Like, if you're a former national champion, one of the most well-known riders in the Peloton, on the, the biggest, most like well-known team, there's a little bit more spotlight put on you, but also like anything that causes a crash, also a little bit more spotlight on that as well.
Yeah.
Um, Responses to my video have been honestly insane and like a little bit of a bummer. I do want to just say, like, at the top, a lot of people seem to take umbrage with my use of the terms diversity and inclusion, which I just want to say all I mean by that is that I think it's a good thing if more people are consciously invited to join us in cycling, more
Yeah.
people from different backgrounds. And if you have some qualm with that, probably this is not the channel for you, probably not the show for you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I had to police a lot of those comments. A lot of people doing some very weird, a lot of people going out of their way to not say the no words that are going to get them in trouble on YouTube, but still trying to say things that were honestly horrible. I deleted a lot of really bad comments and it's been really disheartening. But I did want with that video to open up kind of a good faith discussion about safety in the Peloton. Um, a lot of responses, either I would say the overwhelming responses, almost everyone who saw the video says some version of like that was obviously very dangerous and over the line and you shouldn't cause a crash. There have also been responses, all the responses tend to be like on the extremes. This is the internet, so of course like everything is the most extreme turned up to 11 version. So
Right.
it's mostly people saying like Justin should be banned for life, which is too extreme. Or I mean, I think the suspension he got was a little bit light, but I also think banned for life is like, that's crazy. Like there are people who got
Yeah.
caught doping and didn't get banned for life. Um,
Right.
but we also got some of the other end of the spectrum, which was like, this is normal and happens all the time. And, in Europe, it's worse, stuff like that. Which I don't know, Ben, how much of this do you see?
I don't see. I see similar moves happen, but I don't see to that extent that they happen,
Sure.
or to the extent where they're
Yeah, I think
causing
that's the problem
crashes.
is, yeah, defining this. And I think the definition there is like using your shoulder to move people out of the way or like getting slightly in front of someone to box them out and move them off the wheel you want them to be on. One of the things I was sent was this video from Will Harden, EVOQ, as an example. This is a video we're looking at from Gateway where a butcher box rider uses their shoulder right here to sort of move someone wider in the corner. I was sent that as an example of like, see, this happens all the time. It just happened today. Here's this video that came out today of a similar move. And I'll say like looking at this one, it doesn't look like there's any intent by either of those riders to crash each other. It looks to me like they're both just trying to get through the corner safe. But it does, I think, open a discussion about like if we were to write a new rule about this or like codify it further. This is something that like Criterium Nation podcast has done a good job of talking about a lot, is like rules and how we codify them. There's a world in which we write a rule where that video of a slight nudge with the shoulder is sort of the same thing as what we see in the Justin Williams Thomas Gibbons video. So it's like, where do we want to draw that line? I don't know. Do you have thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the the issue with, if you codify a hard rule of no contact, what
It's going to
happens?
happen. Yeah.
Like, right. So then you're saying, okay, well, you can have contact, but to at what extent?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think and then you're saying, okay, well, contact, but not in this circumstance. Like it gets too nuanced, right?
Right. Yeah, it
So
gets hard to define. Throw it in the
yeah,
comments. I'm assuming
right,
people are gonna say if there's a crash, like that's a
right,
pretty obvious like at least go back and review it if a crash is caused. And there are times that a crash is caused, it's clearly an accident. Like
hmm
if you're on this YouTube channel right now, go watch my video from Sunny King. I got crashed out of the Cat 2 race a year ago, broke my wrist. Ben was there and saw it happen, but like I know whose fault it was, but I don't think he was trying to crash me out. I think it was a guy who
right.
thought he could make it through a gap that he could not make it through. And it was an accident, definitely. But, maybe there is a process by which one rider can say, like, hey, I felt like this person put me in danger, and here is the evidence I have of that. Or intentionally,
Yeah,
it it has to be intent driven, and that's always going to require some level of like it's hard to prove intent.
right. That was kind of my point, right? It's hard to prove
Mm-hmm.
intent. And then you run into the instance of, was it really an accident, or, right, because we're bike racing, right? We're 30 miles an hour bunched up. There's a there's sort of like a mutually assured destruction handshake. Any one of us could do
Yeah,
anything at any time, and so a momentary lapse of judgment could, mm, you know, end
it could.
someone's year,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So
And
it's one of those things where I'd rather, if it's, we need to be making decisions in the race that are not making that risk any higher.
yeah, yeah. So to the question of it being an accident, Justin Williams has put out this apology since the video I made. Um, most of the responses to this have been very negative. I don't know. It does seem like the suspension. It seems a little bit light to me, and he
Yeah.
calls it an accident, but uh, to me it doesn't look like an accident. I don't know, but I will say I've
Yeah.
misjudged those things before. Like looking at
Mhm.
I was watching the race where the fight at Salt Lake happened, and Corey got tangled up with a rider from Best Buddies, Corey Williams, and I do think like the more times I have watched that Corey skipped his chain or came unclipped from his pedals, maybe even clipped a pedal, and that was what caused him to uh, run into that rider and take them to the gutter. And so that was an accident to that degree, and that was a little bit of a misunderstanding. This one,
Yeah.
I don't know, the video is grainy, but I haven't heard an explanation that would make it make sense to me. Like, if Justin had said my front tire went flat and I had to completely straighten up and just run into the curb because you can't corner on a flat front, like that, maybe his front tire doesn't look flat in that video. He hasn't said that. That's an example of like
Right.
maybe I would believe that was an accident. Anyway,
Right.
I just wanted to clarify intent with that video and say that like it does happen, and I want to open up a dialogue about like as racers, and honestly I am more worried about us as amateurs, like seeing that and doing some things like that than I am pros. Like I do think that those guys 9 times out of 10 know what they're doing, and there's more on the line for them, and maybe they're more willing to take risk, but also there's something on the other side of that risk. With amateurs, there's like nothing on the line for us, and still sometimes people are willing to put you in the gutter for a beer preem, and so I'm worried
Yeah.
about that kind of escalation. But yeah, I just want to open up
Right.
a conversation about safety, about when you can make contact, when you shouldn't make contact, when someone should be suspended. Let's hash it out. So let us know in the comments. I guess let's move on from that. We have a ton of other stuff to talk about. Like even if that hadn't happened, we have so much other stuff.
And a lot of it's all drama related,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
think yeah, we've pretty much entered silly season at this point. Silly season being the portion of the year where like racing is kind of done and everything that's happening is like rumors and transfers and just like general shenanigans. So NCL cut over half of its roster.
Yeah. That's not a good look at the least. I think, we do this thing where we talk about what should be on the show, not on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And we both agreed that the NCL rosters were a little bloated. From a team and business standpoint, the rosters were a little bloated, right? So I think if NCL is looking at it, they're going, next year, do we really need this many riders, right?
Right.
I think the mid year layoff, the 2 months without compensation,
I think
I
it's more than
think
that.
that,
I think it's
oh, if they're not getting paid 3 months, right?
yeah, October,
Yeah,
November. I assume they got paid for this month, although maybe it happened at the beginning, so maybe that's 4 months. So all the
yeah,
riders that got terminated, they had contracts that went through this full year. The contracts were terminated, so at least they were being paid monthly, and the last
yep,
3-4 months of those contracts are not going to be honored, which that sucks, especially because
Yeah.
like one of the this is another like we're trying to be nuanced about all of these things and kind of like talk about the positives and the negatives, credit where credit is due, and call out the things that are goofy. We've gotten a lot of flack for both for being positive on NCL and for being negative on NCL. We've gotten people involved with NCL mad at us, and we've also had people who hate NCL say we're giving them too much credit. But one thing we've given them credit on is they did take a lot of talented riders who didn't have a home, pay them well, give them a good, well supported setup, and they were really successful. I mean, for first year
Yeah.
teams, they had a lot of great results this year.
I mean, you could argue Miami Knights is the best crit team in the country. Like, there's an argument to be made for Miami Knights being one of the top 2 or 3 crit teams this year, right? Like,
I
they
think
were very good teams.
yeah, top three is definitely debatable. I think
Yeah,
it would be hard. Legion's been a little hit and miss this year, but
yeah,
especially with the consistency of the Legion women's squad, it would be hard to argue against. You know, if we're taking the men's and women's together,
right.
it would be hard to argue against that. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely in the conversation for the best in the nation, and for a first year team, like that's really hard to do. We're seeing a lot of other first year
Mhm.
teams that are well supported to some degree that have not gelled as well, have not been able to put it together, and you know, it just shows that's tough to do. And the NCL teams, when they were first announced, we thought like maybe they're just gonna do these NCL races, and then those people will go freelance other races or whatever. But they had like full
Yep.
supported setups. I stayed in the same hotel as Miami Knights at least one of the Speed Week days, maybe a couple. But I mean, they had a bus, they
Yeah.
had a trailer, they had staff, like they were fully set up. But
Yeah.
they also maybe blew through their budget doing that. So
Right. Yeah. That. I mean, I don't want to reveal sources, but we know they blew through their budget for a fact.
yeah,
So, I think it's goofy to say the least that they terminated contracts early, and now, like, you're a professional athlete. This is your profession. You're
mm-hmm.
relying on that contract to be honored from January to December. I think it's frankly unacceptable for them to terminate the contracts, this late in the year where they're not getting, they're not going to be able to get a job racing bikes and start getting paid again until
yeah,
January.
yeah, yeah. That's really tough.
That's not cool to me.
And we definitely feel for all the riders who have been laid off. A lot of super talented riders on the men's and women's side on both of those teams. They haven't retained a ton. I'm going to run down the list of who they've retained that we know of from this cycling news article. It looks like Miami Knights have kept Andrea Sear, Brittany Praffrey, don't know how to say Praffrey, um, Paulo Munoz, Daniela Garcia, uh, another sorry Cuban name I cannot pronounce.
Contreras, yeah,
Yes, Pridgeras, and then Johnny Clark and Clever Martinez. So that's only 7 people across the men's and women's roster that they've re-signed for Miami Knights. And then Denver Disruptors is only keeping Riley Sheehan, Noah Granigan, Ulysses Castillo. Um, maybe are they? It looks like these are the only ones that are confirmed to be staying.
yeah.
So it seems like
And
none
Leah
of
Kirchman is confirmed to be gone as well.
yeah.
So
Well, she is
we,
confirmed gone because she got a better opportunity. So sounds like she
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
offered something and took a different contract. But um,
sure,
they have also announced, and this is a little bit of like it seems weird. They've announced that they are uh, adding another team next year. They're adding an Atlanta team in the 2024 season, and we were at the Atlanta race.
yeah, yeah. I if I'm an NCL rider who just got laid off, and then 2 weeks later I see they're announcing another team,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a slap in the face to me, right? They're kind of
Yeah,
phrasing it as, these are we're gonna field an Atlanta team with local riders, so maybe, it's more of a quote unquote development, like, hey, we're gonna and they're not going to be as well supported or well funded or whatever, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only, that's kind of my thought,
Yeah,
because we're thinking about, local Atlanta riders who can compete at that level. And,
sure.
Brock Mason, Oliver Flout, Michael Garrison, those are the three names that really stand out to us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, who's going to fill out the rest of that roster?
Right.
But
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about those Atlanta riders you just named, or Atlanta area, and how
yeah,
strong the Southeast scene is, but uh, it would be tough to fill out an entire team with sort of just local Atlanta people. I mean, maybe you could get into Athens, and then there's a little bit more talent over
yeah,
there, but yeah, people who race at the top level. It sounds like they realized they had so many international riders that there was a big cost there. I assume they were
yeah,
covering travel for some of those people, and like, international, we will get back to, we're going to come back to Legion, and we're going to come back to international stuff. We're going to book into the episode here, so stick with us. We're going
yeah,
to come back to all that stuff. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of international riders come over, which has been cool. But I also get that an organization that's spending money would want to go, you know, if there's talent here, it's going to be a little bit more cost effective to try and sign that.
right.
And there's also like an element where they're trying to make these geographically based teams, and like people are going to pull for the actual hometown heroes more.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like,
Yeah,
I guess they can't sign Ty Magner because he's on Legion. They can't sign him.
right.
He's Athens. I'm running down the list of like strong Athens people in my head. Although I'm not sure he's still in Athens, but I know he has been. He went to college
Yeah.
there, I'm pretty sure. But
I mean, you have like someone nobody knows about, Andy Serrano, who's won some Caribbean races, South
yeah,
Central American races. Like people like him, Frank Travieso isn't confirmed,
yeah. He's confirmed
right?
not to be
Maybe,
on nights, but he's not confirmed
right.
to be on. Also, Gabe Mendez, not on the list, but someone that we would think it would make sense. He's in Georgia. He has raced NCL. He had a good season too. We saw a lot of him at the
Mm-hmm.
front of big races this year. It would make sense for him to
Yeah,
get a call up to an Atlanta team.
right. Um, and even talking to some NCL riders, this is another thing that really bugs me. So imagine the organization who lays you off, when they lay you off, says, "Hey, you can buy 1,000 shares of stock for $1,000," or like you can buy like 1,000 shares of stock if you sign an NDA and you don't talk about us.
Mm-hmm.
From
Yeah,
what I
and
from what I was told, not a single rider signed that.
I heard it was that and return all your team equipment.
Okay, that's new. That I
That
didn't hear that.
I've heard that separately, but
Oh
yeah.
man.
So yeah. I mean, I get that they want to get all that equipment back. I've also heard rumblings Factor was supporting all those teams. I've heard rumblings that Factor is like, maybe there's some kind of shakeup there. Maybe they're like not gonna do as much selling in the US, so they might be like pulling back from supporting US stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you're a rider and you just got cut, I think your first thought is like, all right, well, I got two bikes, I can sell those each for 2.5 grand. Like, how you're already doing the math for like how
Yeah.
you're gonna make it, and that's pretty normal. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
riders, it's sort of part of their compensation almost, is that you keep all the gear and you sell the gear at the end of the year. Sounds like that wasn't
Yeah.
the case here, but also if you're terminating my contract early, I'm not going to honor the part of the contract where I give you back a few $1,000s worth of stuff. So it's kind of,
Right. Right. The contract is gone at that point.
yeah, contract
Right.
is done. You broke the contract first, so
Right.
it is what it is. Um
Oh man.
so that's the NCL news. We will see what happens. Again, we had fun at NCL Atlanta. I had fun watching those races. They gave a
Yep.
lot of good riders a home this year, and it was the few times we did get to see like Denver, Legion, all the teams in the same place. I think it elevated the rate. It made for better racing
Yep.
that there were a lot of riders that were well supported um,
Yeah.
across the board.
The 2023 crit season would have been worse off without the NCL teams, and that you can't even make that argument otherwise.
Yeah, agree. The level was higher overall, and that's just like not even debatable. Um, so moving on from silly season stuff to some actual racing, uh, I want to talk about a big a big betrayal, an American betrayal, teammates chasing teammates. Um, of course, what I'm talking about is the Maryland Cycling Classic. So I watched Maryland Cycling Classic. This is like the one UCI level road race we've got in America that a lot of the big teams, the World Tour teams, are coming over for. This is not a World Tour race. It's like a UCI.pro or some. It's a level
Yeah,
below that, whatever they call it. But uh, we had a betrayal here, a teammate betrayal of an American hero, if not a Native American, a guy who lives in America most of the time. But there were several breaks throughout the day, and kind of the story of this race was like a break of 6 or 7 would get away. They would get a minute or two. They would get slowly brought back, but that group that came back to them was much smaller than the group that
yeah,
was there each time, to the point that by the end there were probably only 20-25 people in contention. Um, the final break that got away that actually ended up sticking was Tom Skunes and Skelmoza from Little Trek, and then we had Hool and Hamilton. Um, and yeah, so with about 17 miles to go, Tom Scoins, who I'm a big fan of Scoins, the
yeah.
potato man, the official ambassador of potatoes from Latvia. Um, he is married to or engaged to, I believe, an American, honorary American rider. But I was psyched when I saw him go off the road, and I thought like, or go up the road, and my thought was like, he has a teammate in this group in Skelmoza. Skelmoza is going to sit on. The other three would be dumb to tow him up. It was a good
Yeah.
tactical position, and Skuins is a guy who can go solo, get arrow, and just dig in. And Skelmoza contributed to the chase and chased him back. Like, not just contributed, but was driving the chase and chased him back.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
much like what we have seen from Jumbo Visma at I don't know why there's this end of season. We talked about how the racing gets weirder toward the end of the year, the like last chance saloon thing, but it's like
Right.
everyone just forgot to not chase their teammates right now.
It, that's rule number one.
Yeah.
And I guess it's last chance saloon. Maybe the DSs. I think we're getting to points where when there's multiple people on a team that can win a race, there's multiple franchise players, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they all are like, you get that ego, and they're like, well, no, I want to win, and they're
Right.
competitive, so they're just going for it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think, as someone who loves Toms as well, I'm like, come on,
And as someone
come on,
who is in
like
charge of a team, so if this was our
yeah,
team and, Alex
this
was up the road and I'm in the break of 4 behind, you would probably tell me, Jonathan, don't chase Alex, right? You would
if
say, Jonathan, you're in trouble if you chase Alex.
we, you know, culturally, our team is really, really good about, the team honoring the teammate thing, right? And
Yeah.
to the extent where, like, if you were up the road and Alex chased you back, Alex may not be on the team anymore. Like, that's how strongly we believe in that tactic, right?
Yeah.
So, like, fundamentally, that's like bike racing 101. Don't
Right.
chase your teammates.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, at some point, like at this level, they all have radios. Like, is it not on the DS
Yeah.
at some level? Like this and the Vuelta thing. It's like, I feel like DSs are just saying like, it's the end of the year. We've gotten the wins we needed, so you guys just go crazy. But like, and to be fair, Skelmoza did win, but like that was not a guarantee. And it's the same thing with the Vuelta. Like it does look like Jumbo is going to win regardless, but it was like they looked at the board and said like, all right, what's one way that we could like roll the dice and potentially mess this up? And it was
Right.
like, let's attack each other when no one is attacking us, and then if we blow both of our if we blow ourselves and then we're garbage the next day, like Rimco just had the one bad day and he's way out of contention.
Right.
It's totally within
Right.
the realm of possibility that you let Rog and Vingegaard off the leash. They just pound each other into the ground on stage like 16 or 17 or whatever that was, and the next day they're garbage for one day, but like they're out again. And same thing
Yeah.
here. It's like you let Skelmoza bring that group back to Scoins. Even just him being in the rotation working with them, there's a very good chance that Nielsen Paulus jumps him. Like
Right. The way they were riding this race is, oh, Nielsen's going to win if we bring him to the line. That's the entire break was doing, right? They were forcing Nielsen to work.
So that's why though, like
Yeah.
Scoins being up the road forces Nielsen to work. Like if you're Skelmoza,
Right.
make Nielsen do it if you're worried about him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
it's a leadership failure on the DSs. That's all I'm going to say.
yeah,
Across the board,
fair.
it's ridiculous.
Yep. And yeah, so that was Maryland Cycling Classic. For some reason I thought there was a women's Maryland Cycling Classic, but there was not, right?
No.
There was no,
not that I'm aware
if there
of.
was a women's race, there was no stream of it. So,
Yeah.
that's something that could be improved.
Maryland Cycling Classic, I do want to shout a couple things out.
Okay.
All right. So there's a common dialogue, and we've talked about this often, where, oh, it's just parking lot crits. Oh, these guys, if they were to race in Europe, they would get smoked. Tyler Stites, Scott McGill, Eder Frere, Riley Sheehan, all in the chase group for the break. So they're like the breaks up here with all World Tour guys and Hugo Huel, who's on a pro team, who's on a continental team. And then there's a chase group of 12. A third of that are all American riders who are racing American crits.
Yeah.
So I think that, the argument for, oh, crits, the B League, oh, it's whatever. It's, they're not that good. I think that solidifies that argument as moot at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I said this, so I've had many private discussions also as a result of that Justin Williams video, and one of those was with a rider at that level, and one of the things I said to him was like, I have defended Legion here and there, and one of the things I will defend them against is exactly that, is like people saying, these guys are racing parking lot crits, they would get destroyed if they went and did a real race, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Like, they can't hang, that's why they're doing this. But, like, you look at American crits, I mean, we had Superman Lopez racing in America. We had all of the fresh, like 1 year off the World Tour riders that have that came into NCL this year.
Yeah.
We had Oscar Sevilla. There have been a ton of people who are at that level, have been at that level, are going back to that level next year. And like, while they do well, it's not like they just run away with it. It's not like it's not like you put someone who was in the World Tour last year in the American crits and they're like lapping the field while Legion is pulling. That is not happening.
Right.
So like there's a discrepancy for sure. Like World Tour is a harder level and there's a higher level of quality, but it's not the night and day just like, just getting smoked thing that people make it out to be.
Right.
Totally agree on that. Having said that, let's get into some more results. There were several other races that we could not watch, but we do want to do the thing that we're the best at on this show, which is pointing out when riders that we've talked about get a good result.
Right.
So that we look smart.
Right. And by the way, if you
So
want your race to be talked about for real, figure out a stream. Not that hard.
yeah, it's hard for us to talk about, we want to talk about the race. We want to get deeper into the tactics and what happened and how it played out. And it's very hard for us to do that without a stream. I guess we should mention the ACC race where they had an in-race camera that was live streaming off of
Yeah.
who was that
Holloway.
was doing the Holloway? Yes, Daniel Holloway
Yeah.
was riding with the stuff. It was interesting to watch, although it's weird that he was sort of not racing. He was just riding in the race. So like I think other riders didn't kind of know how to respond to, like, do I let him have the wheel or do I go around him? Like, what do I need to?
Yeah.
That makes it weird.
Right.
But I do think the technology will get to a point where we're not going to have to put someone in there to essentially be the human camera moto. We will be able to just put a camera on several riders' bikes and then swap between 5 or 6 perspectives throughout the race. And that's like a
Yeah.
little bit lower impact way, and then maybe you put enough cameras on enough riders, maybe you got one in the break. That was one thing that happened. Is like the break went and Holloway wasn't there, so the last little bit, we classic thing we do talk like essentially doing the show via text. You were like, yeah, once the break went, it was kind of boring because we couldn't see it.
Right. But I mean, here's what I will say: something's always better than nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
for
So
sure.
at least we got coverage. We knew what was happening in real time, and we had, we were able to kind of talk about the race.
Yeah.
But when it's just a result sheet and it's kind of like, well, we know the riders and teams enough to sort of like guess what happened, but
Yeah, we're piecing it
we like,
together.
yeah, but we like the tactics. We want to know what happened and pontificate on stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Like we want to in this show get into like the nuance and the minutia. That's kind of what we're here
Yeah.
for. So we need to see it all. Speaking of like, calling out the things that are not getting as much attention or whatever, we talked about the combativity award and like giving those out. I definitely want to give Tom Scoins one. That was I meant to say that when we were on Tom Scoins, but I think our first recipient of one of those awards was Kim Stoveld back a few weeks ago, and I think we said like she's super strong, having a great season, and she's going to get a big result. And here she is with second at Bucks County Classic. So got to call that out. Sandwiched between 2 Legion riders. Huge result for her. I mean, Bucks County is one of the only, I believe it's like a 200K crit. It's one of the only long, like 2 hour plus crits out there. So you can't fake it on a day like that. And,
No.
real talent showing through for sure. I believe 1 through 4 in that race were, sorry, 1 through, yeah. She was the only Legion race, non-Legion rider in the top 4. Yeah, Skylar Schneider, Kim Stoveld, Samantha Schneider, Alexis Ryan. So solid breakthrough.
That's a big result. That's a big result, right?
Especially for someone who's like relatively new to the sport, coming over from triathlon. Yeah. I think this is like her first season racing at this level, and we've been seeing her like having breakthroughs all year.
I mean, literally night and day difference from Athens Twilight. Like,
yeah,
not even the same in person.
Yeah, we noticed her at Athens like dangling off the back and then off the front, and just talked about like, man, it's crazy that it's even possible to go from as far off the back as she was to as far off the front as she is right now in that amount of time. We were like, who is this person? And then I met her later that week, her and her husband, both super nice people. So shout out there. And another result that I wanted to throw out there, Green Mountain stage race, one of the only stage races left going. Cormac McGeough, a guy we've talked about a lot, who's on that Canel's team, which Canel's is like the chiclet style gum you get at the register at a Mexican restaurant. And I still think they should have a bike that's like the old Jelly Belly bikes, where they have like the little gum, or like a mape with the tiles. They need to do that with the gum.
They need a flashier bike for sure.
Yeah,
They need
So
just a tacky looking frame with that gun.
right,
That's what they need.
people hated on the Jelly Belly bikes, man, but I would, if somebody's got one of those Argon 18s with the jelly beans all over it, I would rock that right now. I would buy that. I
Right.
think that was cool.
Right.
But yeah, Cormac McGeo's he's been racing for that team. I think he was guest riding for Good Guys at this race, but yeah, wanted to call out he got third in the GC at that race. So just a guy who doesn't get talked about that much, that I think we were mentioning him like in the preseason CBRs as someone to look out for, and
Yep.
consistently through this season, I want to say like overperformed versus the amount of attention he's been given. Also CS Velo, we've talked about like, you know, where have they been all season? Got the win with Owen Wright. So they,
There we go.
yeah, clinching victory from the jaws of defeat. They took a drink at the last chance saloon or whatever. I don't know. They got
Right.
one last one in. Yeah, on the men's side of Bucks County Classic, Robin Carpenter from Legion of LA won, and then the aforementioned Tyler Stites was second with Kyle Murphy. Kyle Murphy also at Maryland Cycling Classic was rocking some of the old school like oval shaped Oakleys, and
That's awesome.
yeah, just looking awesome.
And he was also rolling some of the early breaks in that race too. Like
yeah, he was.
He had a really good race that weekend as well.
Yeah, I believe he was in that last group of 25, and yeah, a guy I was a fan of back in the fixed gear crit days. Cool
Yeah.
dude who's transitioned over and is on Legion now. Had a pretty good season with them. I also want to call out Patton Sims, a Southeast guy, junior.
Yeah.
He came up 5th in Bucks County. I think he's definitely one to watch. Was he the one that
He's
bridged?
on
He's on Kelly Benefits.
yeah, he's on KBS. Okay.
He's the one at Athens who bridged to that break, right?
No, that's Artem Schmidt. He's on
Okay.
Artem Schmidt's on Action Hoggins Vermins.
I'm getting my Freak of Nature juniors confused from Freak of Nature juniors from the Southeast confused. Two people that like, you know, I was racing against them as a grown man when they were 14 and just like getting smoked by them. So
yeah,
both Patton Sims and yeah. Anyway, some other, you know, results to go through here. The final ACC race, which a little bit anticlimactic because the overalls were clinched already, but I do want to say Garcia from Virginia Blue Ridge 2024 got a win over the Schneider sisters. So something that's been very hard to do this season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulled one out.
She's one of like what, 5 or 6 people that's been able to do it this year.
Yeah, very few.
That's
tough. The Legion women's team has been even more consistent than the Legion men's team. So that's a really tough result to pull out. And on the men's side, Danny Summerhill won the race and won the overall for ACC. So, you know, clinched it with a win. And Frank Travieso, who we mentioned has not been re-signed to Miami Knights, was third, which is insane. I think he's like 45. I mean, just
it's
absolutely ridiculous. He's so good.
Lifetime
Noah
achievement
Granigan.
award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Noah Granigan, Denver Disruptors in second. So a really good finish from both of the NCL teams. I guess this was right before all the bad news. I'm also seeing a top 10 from Preston I from Work Hard, Be Humble. We talked early in the season.
They had a good weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. They I believe Cesar Marte got a podium as well. That's a team that new team for this season, and like took them a minute to get, you know, spun up, but they've really come through late in the season here.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing, so coming full circle back to the Legion thing, Justin's suspension doesn't go into effect until the beginning of the ACC season next year. And in the meantime, they have got their new crit series, which we talked about in as much depth as we possibly could on the previous episode. But we got a couple more announcements over here. Um, yeah, got techers from England coming over to race the CRIT series race in Florida next month.
Yeah, October. It's like a month from today almost, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, next month. I'm excited to see that. We've talked about how we've wanted to see like an all-star showdown between like Legion, Techers, Trinity, and like a Mido Q and the DCC guys. And so
yeah,
I'm really excited to see Techers come in and race, add like a UK style to the race.
yeah. It also answers, not the same question of like what if a world tour team did this, but there's always that question of like is our elite racing as hard as your elite racing like in other
Yeah.
countries? What is like kind of the level like? So it's cool, and it's been cool this season to see the Mido Qs and the DCCs. There's been a lot of international interest, in American crit racing this season in general, which I think is like, that to get back to the Legion thing, it's like it's kind of undeniable that the existence of Legion has elevated the perception of crit racing internationally. Like
Yeah.
people are definitely talking about it, and maybe in the last year or so it's taken kind of a negative turn, but it's something that people are aspiring to and people are coming over here for. And I think at least in recent years Legion has at least like driven that charge. I think if you're from England, as Techers is, you probably know one American crit team and it's Legion, right?
Yeah. I mean, their Legion's brand recognition is so strong that I'm confident in saying that if you are a bike racer, or if you like bikes and you like bike racing, anywhere in the world, you probably know about Legion.
Right. Yeah. And just that statement has put a lot more eyeballs on the racing that we're talking about. And you know i I still think that crash, that video showed a crash that was over the line, but it's like
Yeah.
two things can be true, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's the Again, that's like the nuance. I feel like the internet exists to like just flatten everything to I've been say I've had to say this a lot recently. Any discussion that involves Legion immediately gets flattened to Legion good versus Legion bad, and
Right.
those are the two two opinions you're allowed to have. And it's like that with anything, you know.
Right. I do. I did not. I literally just thought of this. So you're not going to have a prepared answer, which is fine.
Okay, hit me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we think that the rise of American crit racing has been influencing European UCI racing this year? Look at the look at the Glasgow Circuit course. Look at Maryland Cycling Classic. Look at even the Vuelta stages, kind of near Madrid and everything. They race that time trial at night in the city center. That is the American crit racing
That's
model through and
American.
through.
Yeah,
Do
that's
we
American style.
do we think that the UCI organizers in these races are looking at our races, seeing how people are lined up on the sideline, and going, "We need that at our event."
I don't know if that's an influence or if it's I will say I don't think it's a coincidence that the American is winning the race that has been like the biggest like American
Yeah,
style debacle. Like
the biggest
this
cluster.
Giro has been, yeah,
Yeah,
this Giro has been very American style in the sense of like you were talking about the TT in the dark. I have definitely done a crit where it was supposed to be a twilight crit and it gets a little past twilight and the street lights haven't come on, and it's very similar to
yeah,
how that was raced. And same thing with like, they shorten the stage and you're in the race and you don't know there was that year at Auburn where they shortened the race by a lap. They gave us the bell early on accident, and we spent an entire lap racing, and everyone was asking each other, are we sprinting on this lap? Are we sprinting on the next lap? And very similar to the stage they cut short, where like no one knew where the time was taken, no one knew where they finished, so there was like the finish, and then the GC guys were still racing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's influence or just happenstance, but I do think it's something that the American rider is winning the race that is like this, because that seems to be like what happens in America.
Right.
Maybe that's one to grow on. Everybody, let
Yeah.
us know. Do you think that European racing is being influenced by American style? Do they want to have races at night because they see our cool Twilight crits? Yeah, let us know. But in future episodes, as we kind of like move into the off season here, we're gonna try to get some of those international riders that have been coming over on the show and talk to them about why they have done it, what their experience was like. Is the racing more dangerous and aggressive here? If they have thoughts about the safety stuff, we're going to get into all that. So, subscribe to the channel, subscribe American Peloton on podcast apps. Check out Ben's coaching services.
Check out
buy
our
some
team
coffee
on
from Domestique
Instagram.
Coffee.
Yeah.
All
that.
all the things.
And if you want to
but yeah,
sponsor
until
us,
then,
I'm taking that as well. If you want to sponsor our
yeah,
team.
it's silly season, so we're taking proposals for sure. All right, well, thanks everybody. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Peace.